Welcome. Scott here. Here is a quick boss guide for the upcoming LUFENIA Plus event, Glittering City of Gold Mission Dungeon. The featured units are Jegran from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Sazh from Final Fantasy XIII, Palom from Final Fantasy IV and Lyse from Final Fantasy XIV. This story chapter event also marks the debut of Sazh LD. We will be fighting two Optimus which has 14 million HP each. The boss is immune to generic attack down and lock debuffs. The turn requirement is 65. The HP requirements is 30,000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the time that the event was released for the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. Firstly, let's go through the LUFENIA Plus Orb Conditions. The LUFENIA Plus Orb will begin at the start of the fight at the counter of 10. It will disappear at the 79% HP threshold and reappear at the 49% HP threshold. To uptick the orb, you need to deal critical brave damage to the boss. There are 3 party members that allows your party to constantly deal critical brave damage. They are Sazh, Barret and Kate Sith. Other than these 3 units, other units that can reliably do critical damage. They are Orania, Sync, 9, Glove, Cloud, Tifa, Rude and Kais. Orania's Vita Crusher debuff will allows your party to deal critical damage. However, her S2 inflict the debuff only on the targeted unit, so you need to have her use her S2 twice. Sync can guarantee to deal critical damage with her A, but each A will only apply for 3 turns. 9's Rebellious Fang buff has guaranteed critical rate, but it will only applies after the buff character takes HP damage with his White Knight buff active. Glove has 100% critical rate up from his LD. When using him, beware of the boss guaranteed hit recast attacks. Kais has 100% critical rate up aura from his Selkie Soul buff. Lastly, the remaining 3 units have critical rate up buff from their skills. Cloud has 60% critical rate up from his S2, Tifa has 50% critical rate up from her EX and Rude has 100% critical rate buff from his LD. Kate, Barret, and Sazh provides good call options as well, so you can also use them as calls. As the orb will disable for a while, it is also possible to burst past the thresholds without using critical rate enablers. Now let's proceed with some party setup recommendations. Recommended calls abilities. To ensure that you are able to constantly break them, it is important to inflict defense down debuffs. Example of calls abilities that inflict defense down calls are Ferris, Jack, Titus. As the boss has a huge amount of HP damage up debuff calls like Kareza May, Gabrinth, Ignis, and Maria are useful. Although a bit trickier to use, aura type HP damage up calls like Queen and Kimari are also viable. As the orb condition requires you to deal critical brave damage, you can use critical rate up calls like Sazh, Kate Sith, and Barret. Next, I will be covering units that will be useful to handle the fight mechanics. Like other LUFENIA Plus events, it is always recommended to bring supports for their aura and buffs. They are Porum, Setzer, Agrias, Kate Sith, Ishtala, Bartz, Lena and Afma. As the boss have a hard-hitting recast ability, and if you are play the non-delay game, damage mitigation is a must. Options include Zack, Kor, Gladiolus, Warrior of Light, Orin, 9, and Glove. For damage dealers, you can consider the following units: Jegran, Jet, Ace, Kuja, Cloud of Darkness, Chaos, Galbez, Zidane, Vayne, Palom, Cloud, Tifa, Kais, Sync and Orania. Like the previous fight, the boss can gain astronomical defenses. Units that can deal gravity shaving or have defense ignore ability are useful to deploy for the fight. They are X-Death, Sabin, Strago, Yuffie and Beatrix. The boss hits pretty hard, so lot of JP players run boss no turn setup to handle the fight. Cheese options with Idaroth or Sidma are also very popular options used for the fight. On the screen, you will see a timeline showing the HP thresholds triggers that you need to watch out for. Other than the standard LUFENIA Plus aura boosts, you need to watch out for the defensive posture thresholds. When the boss takes that stance, they will gain an additional 100% defense boost. They will be immune to instant break and prevent your party from gaining any brave. To remove the aura, you need to break them. Ignore defense, gravity, and dealing rainbow brave cap damage are the options to break them. The boss will also switch the modes as their HP is lower. They will go from blue to green and lastly to red. The HP attacks will become more frequent while they are in red. When the boss uses its Recast ability, it will cleanse all the debuffs and deal guaranteed hit attack. The attack will be upgraded depending on the color mode that boss is in. I will be covering it in the subsequent slides. Now let's proceed with the boss mechanics proper. Like the previous LUFENIA Plus fights, the boss will gain big stats boosts, brave damage, and brave gain reduction auras when you deplete their HP to a certain threshold. The thresholds trigger for this fight is at the start of the fight, 79% HP threshold and 49% HP thresholds. At the start of the fight, it will boost its defense stats by 200%. At 79% HP threshold, it will further boost its defense stats to 300%. The maximum brave damage reduction auras is 90%. The maximum brave gain reduction auras is 70%. To handle against the brave reduction auras, you can use brave damage up calls like Jack, Sephiroth, or bring a support that have brave damage up like Lena. As the boss defense can be increased up to 400% with its defensive posture stance, ignore defense units or unit that has gravity brave shaving will help you to break them. Alternatively, you can also use the enchant and imperil strategy to hit the enemies for elemental weakness damage. Jegran, the featured BT unit, excels for this fight as he can do rainbow brave damage with his BT effect. Because of this, Setzer is used a lot in JP runs. If you have him, Core will also be very useful here. As this is his featured event, Sazh is useful to use here for his critical rate up buff and brave steel mechanic from his LD. Next, I will be covering the boss key mechanics in detail. The boss will activate the defensive posture stance at the following HP thresholds: start of the fight, 69% HP threshold and the 39% HP threshold. When the stance is activated, it will gain 50% speed up and boosts its defense by a further 100%. While it is active, the boss will be immune to instant breaks and your party won't be able to gain brave. To remove the auras, you break the boss to dispel the stance. Upon breaking it, the following message: defenses crumbled will be triggered. So how you can break them? 1. Make use of the critical rate up buffs to enable critical brave damage to break them. 2. Use enchant and elemental imperil. 3. Use defense ignoring abilities or rainbow brave cap damage. 4. Deploy gravity brave shaving units. 5. You can also consider the following units to be used as calls: Bartz, Ultimecia, Xdet, Amidadalion, and Edward. The next mechanic is the conversion mode and the boss recast ability. The boss will also do its mode change when the defensive posture stance activates at the 69% and 39% HP threshold. On the screen, you will see a table of the boss moveset depending on the color of the mode that the boss is in. It is quite obvious that the boss is at most dangerous mode when the color is red. When the boss is ready to use its recast ability Destructive Laser, it cleanses all debuffs and follow up with a single brave plus HP attack. The attack is guaranteed hit and inflicts 5 debuffs. When it is in green mode, the attack will incorporate an additional 100% initial brave gain before executing the attack. When it is in red mode, the attack becomes a 100% splash damage attack. I am unable to get a screenshot of the recast ability as most of the JP runs that I watch didn't give the boss a turn to use the recast. In a short summary, this fight is actually a carbon copy of the fight that you have faced in Gladiolus Lost Chapter, except that the bosses have higher stats and different orb condition. As the boss have a lot of hard-hitting attacks other than its recast, almost all of the JP runs that I watch doesn't allow the boss to take a turn. If you want to give the boss a turn, make sure you bring some damage mitigation options to handle them. All Gatling and full salvo would most likely wipe out your party without any damage mitigation. I have come to the end of my boss guide presentation. Hopefully you find it useful. If you like the video, please give a like. Please subscribe to my channel for future gaming content. Good luck for the fight tomorrow. Bye.